Hi everybody, thank you for joining this webinar. I'm Ilan from TAG, and with me is Gal, our Chief Product Officer and co-founder. In today's webinar, we're going to talk about IP streams, probing and monitoring in a virtual environment. And as you guys know, TAG has a 100% IP, 100% software solution for monitoring and probing. You're welcome to check it out on our website. This COVID thing that caught us kind of unprepared, to say the least, has made us all change our work processes. Suddenly, one bright day, we had to go take our stuff from the offices and start working from home, which is, it's possible. But then you get to the place where, okay, how do I control my equipment, my components, especially in the video world? How do I do that remotely? Now I need to get access to these components, and how, if at all, I can manage them remotely. Today we're going to engage those issues and a bit around it. So talking about components, Gal, there are some basic common components in the video chain of broadcasts. Can you specify a few ones?
Okay. In a nutshell, broadcast was always very similar, but of course there are new elements. You start from uncompressed content.
Yes.
It used to be an SDI in the past. The content that comes from the camera to the control system, it's more and more moving to an IEP, all the 2110 and the 2022 standards. Next, the uncompressed is encoded and pushed as an industry standard is MPEG transport and pushed over multicast in your facility in order to publish it in classical broadcast or satellite. This MPEG transport is then transported over the available means and received at home. When with the new OTT environment, this TS is many times re-encoded, transcoded to multiple variants, packaged to one of the available technologies, HLS, Dash, etc., pushed to the CDN, to the origin server, and from there it's published and available to the end customers. And luckily enough, we're in an age where all those components already are moved to IP.
Oh, yeah.
So the distribution chain is, I think, kind of purely IP, at least since 5 years ago. And the uncompressed part, the SDI part, is moving to be an SDI over IP these days. Yeah.
So if the COVID would have caught us in the SDI in the cable area, there will be
it would be different.
Yeah, very different situation. So everything needs to be IP, and we'll of course need to convert the SDIs to IP, and then start the video chain, encoders, transcoders, packagers, CDNs, and so on. Okay, and that's all possible in today, and most of these components can be accessed and managed and controlled remotely from home.
One of the meanings of being IP that everything is naturally remote. You're not confined to a physical location.
Yeah.
So next step is just actually utilize the fact that the technology enables you to work completely remotely.
Oh, yeah.
And I think in most organizations today, the equipment actually doesn't sit in the same area where the operation team works.
Yeah.
In the past you had to sit near the encoder's room. Today, it's just in the data center somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so it's basically, even when you're on-prem in the offices, the encoder won't be physically next to you. You'll control it remotely somehow. Okay, and how about the ways to move the streams around? I mean, there's certain protocols probably you need to think about reliability and then security and I don't know, latency, things like that. How do you move your streams around and your mosaic output, for example?
So when we saw customers moving more and more to make the operation people work from home or remotely, we already, from technical point of view, we're ready for that environment in the sense that, first of all, our output is MPEG transport TS over the mosaic video over UDP, which can be published in your network like any other channel.
Yeah.
And I'm familiar with a few customers that actually utilize it and publish this channel through the broadcast network. Another option is utilize the HLS output, which is by nature IP and TCP and available remotely, is not confined to a location as long as you have network access.
Yeah.
Of course, it's come with a price of latency. And what we see more and more is also utilizing, in the last few years, there were involvement of protocols that try to resolve that. How do you publish content over a non-controlled network? And usually, in the beginning, it was used for the primary distribution, and among, for example, our ZXC protocol, and you see also the involvement of SRT and RIST, and we actually see people that utilizing this technology, not just as initially as primary distribution, but also as an mean of access to the content back to the working environment.
These are actually protocols that were made for error correction, and now they can be used now in this era for moving your streams around in an error-free manner, and also in good latency. I mean, in lower latency.
And actually, with the ZXC, we should very soon release our first version that will support the ZXC.
The big version coming out,
both on the input and then the output. So the mosaics could be also published through the ZXC CDN.
Okay, so you heard it, guys. We're gonna soon release a version that supports ZXC for the input and the output. Wait for it. Okay, so there are a few ways to move your streams around, and our output, or any output, the mosaic output is also. You can also move it around and send it to your NOC engineers at home with either TS, ZXC, RIST, or whatever method you choose. And one use case that we have from our customer, it took the TS output, pushed it to a ZXC CDN, and from there to the NOC engineers at home to a ZXC app on an iPad, so they could watch the mosaic and control it. And that's a nice use case. It always comes on with the price of latency, which is you need to think about it, at least consider it. And okay, so you have your components in the office and you control them, but it's possible that one of the components, which are usually physical servers or physical machines, would power off, and there's no one there to power it on. These things, for example, won't happen on the cloud. How about migrating to the cloud? I know that we have a solution on cloud, of course, but in the cloud you have your full control over the power of your instance and the networking. If anything fails, you have one place you can go and fix everything. When it fails on-prem, try to find someone to turn it up and all that.
I believe that most organizations already, let's put it in a different way. Organizations are moving to an IP and IT infrastructure for the last few years. Even those organizations that don't necessarily use a public cloud already utilize to some extent private cloud environments on their data center.
VMs.
With VMs, for example. Yeah. And the move to a public cloud, for many of them, is just simplifying the process where they don't need to maintain the actual hardware. But from that point on, it's not that different. It just, it takes time to get used to.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, there's the access to the cloud environment from bitrate point of view.
Yes, of course.
You're limited in bitrate when you push it to a public cloud environment. But I believe that most organizations, from workflow point of view, the difference is not that big. It's just more a mindset.
Yeah, you need to change something, and the video world is really evolving fast, and it's sometimes not easy to change your mindset to working remotely on the cloud and with your whole video chain. But are all the components of a proper video ecosystem available on the cloud? You have encoders. I know you have encoders. You have transcoders, of course, but other things, everything can be managed. You can fully migrate to the cloud.
From distribution chain, of course, OTT is natural cloud.
Yeah.
You see more and more use cases, for example, for playout environment in a cloud. I guess when it comes to the publishing the uncompressed content to the cloud, there's still a catch because of the big bandwidth, the huge bandwidth required. But it's still a question because we do see some inclinations to maybe utilize mezzanine protocols in order to publish this content into a cloud environment, just in order to reduce the bandwidth, but still keep the low latency and the high
at hand,
the high quality. Now, additional thing we recently see, I think about 3-4 months ago, also Amazon started enabling multicast.
Multicast over, specific regions.
In a specific, I think 1 region or 2 regions.
Yeah, something like that.
In a virtual private network, in a virtual private network, and as it will extend the support of multicast, we'll probably see more and more
video
ecosystem
going to the cloud,
and
even born into the cloud. You can start your whole process from the cloud itself. If you have the content itself from the source, everything else is also available there. So that's that. But there's always challenges when moving to the cloud, and the more components you have along your video chain, the more you'll need to control and monitor it. And that's where a monitoring and probing system comes in hand. What are the main points in which we'd like to monitor?
I would...
Not only on cloud, even on prem, in the video chain. I mean, but even more so in the cloud, because you don't have actual control over the... You used to have the hardware at hand.
I would say when you want to probe your content, the main places or points of interest would be the when things are changing, the moving parts. What I mean by that, anywhere that you change the packaging layer or you change the content. So of course, the classical chain would be on the ingest when you receive the content into your facility. In OTT, next point would be where you transcode and package the content before you publish it to the CDN.
Yeah.
So you want to verify that everything went correctly. And of course, post CDN.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about classical distribution, it's ingress and outgress. It's the places where you want to verify your content when you receive it and when you publish it outside.
So basically, at any point where the content, the source or the content itself changes or altered in some way, you want to open it up just to sniff it or see everything's okay, and then push it onwards. I mean, it's in parallel to the pushing to the next component, but at least you'll know if there were any errors along the way.
True.
And that means that there's a need for flexibility from all these components, all the video components in the cloud. You need them to be flexible. I know that our system is very flexible in that way. Maybe you can say a few words about that.
So, in the spirit of what we call zero friction, which is our approach to flexible workflows, it's not only the flexibility that IP gives you, which was natural to us from day one. It's also the way you utilize the system and the fact that you can control it fully from our API, which is open and accessible to end customer that can use it to automate us. And for example, I'm aware, for example, of a customer that use it to fully automate the behavior of the system, the channels which are monitored, the visual display for different shifts. For example, the unit is used by different parts of the organization or different times, and then they automate the behavior of the system through the API in order to accommodate that. And of course, the last element is the fact that our licensing mechanism was always very flexible in the sense that you can move channels between units, between machines, between environments, and of course we're pushing more and more to be more flexible and more zero friction for the customer.
Of course. Yeah, and I know that some use case you talked about a customer that utilizes our API to do his own processes with our product. I know another customer that takes our TS output and just inserts it to a distributor, and then it becomes just a regular channel on a set-top box that the NOX engineer or anybody who wants to watch it. And also we're native to the cloud. We have our solution on cloud on all three platforms, which is also a flexible way to work with our product. How about we'll take questions maybe? Yes, okay. We have one question, we have a few questions actually. One of them is, do you have an API? We just talked about it. Maybe we have an API and we use the API ourselves with our UI, but we have customers doing their own UIs, their own controllers. Anything you want to do with our system is achievable basically. Everything works on API, so it gives you both the flexibility and the easy way to work with our system. So we have an API and it's one of the best. Another question coming in, I'd like to know how to see the tag mosaic whilst working at home via my work VPN. Thanks. Well, a few ways to do that.
Actually, you know what? Yeah. Actually, it's interesting. We had a customer that they built an automation controlling our system, and they used both the TS, which they pushed internally to the operation room, but they also took the HLS and pushed it to a local storage. On front of that, they put a web server to service it, so operators all around can access the video in real time over HLS. And before they used it, but it was nice to have, but immediately with the COVID, when everybody started working at home, they were connecting over VPN now, and they had full access to the HLS content.
Yeah, and if you can't have that configuration, then you can just log into to our UI and click on the mosaic, on the play icon, and you can watch the HLS output from the UI itself. You know, it depends on the strength of your VPN for jitters and things like that, but it's available through the UI itself. You don't need to do anything in specific. Another use case can be to have a PC in the office which has access to the HLS stream, and then open a VLC or even a browser player and play the HLS output. So that's for that question. Another question, can you explain more about how I use the HLS at home? How would that work if I want to monitor feeds? Well, I think we kind of answered that.
The idea is, the way the system works, it receives the multiple inputs, monitor them, and then generate a visual layout, which then it's available either through uncompressed feed, also as a compressed feed, MPEG transport over Multicast, and packaged at the same time as an HLS. Now HLS is, by nature, it's a TCP protocol, so it's a pull protocol. So you either pull it from our system and view it. And another option we have in our system is that we will push it to some NAS, some storage, and then you can have any means of your own devised access if that's what you're looking for then. And from that point on, it's just TCP, HLS, accessible content.
Yeah. So we push. You have an option to push the HLS output to an FTP server, and then with the manifest file, of course. And then if you just play the manifest file, you have an ongoing stream of the mosaic output. I think we can take one more question. Can you talk more about testing and the network flow in the cloud, and what issues come up frequently? Yeah, cloud.
So I would say that it's interesting enough that when it comes to a cloud distribution, more often we see issues which are not per se video. More often we'll see issues which are IP by nature. For example, when the customer tries to access the content, it's just not available. You try to download the file. For example, a scenario we're meeting repeatedly is you try to download the chunk, which takes 2 seconds, but it takes 10 seconds to download it because of CAD and overflow or other issues, which obviously generate issues when you try to play the content real time with as low as latency as possible.
Encryption was also
encryption, of course.
You need access to depending on the time of the depending on the type of the encryption itself. You need access to different servers that give you the keys. And what I always recommend to the customer is, first of all, if you're in the cloud, open our instance to everything. No incoming or outgoing rules. Start by that, and then close it down as you go to have, as tight as possible security. But in the beginning, open everything. Let's see that everything works, and then let's start closing and see what not works. In a way of elimination. Because otherwise, you need to guess, why can't I have access to this stream or that stream? Why can't I decrypt it? Things like that. Which, handling the network properly can actually eliminate half of those issues.
And of course, the next issue that is very common in an OTT environment that we meet more and more is, because it's still a young technology, implementation are not necessarily identical. There's still a big level of freedom in the way vendor implement, the way you package the content, the way you build the manifest. In this area, we still see that you have a standard, or in the case of HLS, it's a suggestion, it's not a standard, but as time goes, it becomes an industry standard. So in OTT, I would say that one of the main issues that we repeatedly meet is the fact that there's still no industry acceptable standard when it comes to OTT.
Yeah, we more than once, I can even say that almost on every new OTT project, we'll encounter a stream that we can't support, and then we need to figure out what's different from the standard that was meant to be, and then add the support to it. So when talking OTT especially, and that's a cloud native, you'll have all kinds of varieties. Try to stick as much as you can to the standard. So other components, all the components can support that standard. Other questions we have? When you're setting up a cloud system, how much time do you allow for testing? Well, as much as possible. I mean, having a cloud instance it comes with a cost, of course. But if you do your homework properly, I guess ahead, and you have all your components ready, and you know your IPs, your UDPs, and you set up your VPCs in the cloud, and you have your basic architecture ready, then you can set it up, test the whole pipeline, and just pick out those components that don't work and work on them. It will take some time. I never saw a video chain go up and everything works properly.
But I would say that we also usually very flexible, and we give our customer the time to set up the environment and test our solution.
That's a tag with the zero friction attitude, but I can't say that about all the other components in the cloud. But we do our best, and I think our customers know that. I think. We're out of time. Thank you guys all for watching. If you have any questions that weren't answered, or if you have any concerns, feel free to call us or send us an email, and we'll get back to you. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.